welcome back to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Molly,
And Michael.
and today we're really excited to be talking about the new series, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, as well as updates on Big Brother 26 and the Challenge 40. So this week was really exciting in the reality TV world with seeing the Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives. I feel like was just like a big drum that came in. Like everyone was talking about it. It's such a big deal right now in the whole reality TV world. So, what are your thoughts on the show, Michael?
I loved it. I thought we haven't had like a really explosive, good new show, especially like in this vein, I feel like in a long time, that's not like a spin-off of some other show. Like this is a brand new series, not a spin-off of anything. Obviously, some of these girls were well known before, which helps. But as a show, this was obviously brand new and I loved it. I thought that it was so addicting, so good, such a perfect concept. Like, of course they should have their own show. I mean, like, this just makes sense. So I was really glad that this finally came out and I thought it lived up to the hype.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like just the fact that there's so many different layers into their drama, like that just added to it, which we'll get into some of the key highlights from what happened in this season. But like you can't just like fabricate any of that stuff. Like that's like real life things that are happening. Like sometimes I feel like in some of these shows, like the friendship dramas, like are over some stupid fight, like some like little thing. Like these things were not so little. Like these were like actual problems in these people's lives that like could be blown up into the way that they were blown up in the series in the show. So it's like it's interesting to see that side of things filmed too.
Yeah, and like, look, I do love when some little thing just like snowballs and becomes a huge fight. Like sometimes those are the best seasons when something like that happens because it's not so dark and nasty and like family ruining type of thing. But yeah, like so I was watching this kind of at the same time that I was watching the new season of Selling Sunset. And it was so interesting to me to kind of compare these two shows. And we're going to talk about Selling Sunset next week, just so y'all know. But it, I feel like there were because they are similar concepts in a way. It's a group of women and, their friendship and friendship circle, or I guess in Selling Sunset, technically just coworkers. But I feel like on Selling Sunset, there were a lot of things that you could tell were just very much like production pushed this storyline and or some of the women just kind of making rumors up out of nowhere for the sake of drama, for the sake of the show, and it wasn't just authentic things happening in their lives. And some was. I mean, I thought it was actually a good season. But on Mormon Wives, this was all, it felt so much more authentic to me in so many ways. It just felt like we were watching things and real relationships, real things happening that just happened to be captured at this time while they were filming. And that's what the best season is, when authentically things are actually happening that are super interesting. And that was what I felt like most of what we got on Secret Wives and Mormon Wives. I will never say the name of this show correctly.
Same.
I will never type it correctly either. But Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So I thought that's what made this season so good.
Oh, definitely. And also the fact that you mentioned this, that these women were known since they are TikTok famous, from the famously known Mom Talk. If you're aware of that, it was a whole. They're still famous in TikTok world, but like in general, like, that's how they got their following. Just posting about their lives, being moms and Mormon, or be all Mormon wives and living in the same city. Like they were all friends. Like they met that way because they were all making those TikToks. So they also, like, because of that, like I knew from following Taylor, like I knew some of the drama going down. Like I remember her being like, "Oh, we broke up," like her and Dakota, and I'm like, "Wait, they broke up and now they're back together and she's pregnant." Like there was all this stuff that I was seeing before the show even aired that I knew happened, but it was interesting then seeing like what was really going down in their lives. Like you see what they're showing on TikTok and you're like, "Oh my gosh, it's this happy couple, family, like cute, like wholesome vibes." Then you're like, oh my God, that's not what's going down watching that in the show. So, did you know much about Taylor or any of the other housewives or secret
N-
lives? I don't know what to call them. Mormon wives? What do
Mormon
we?
wives, yeah.
Mormon wives. They're basically housewives. Mormon wives.
Yeah, just in like 20 years they'll be housewives.
Yeah.
Um no, I did not follow any of them. I was aware, like I knew that mom talk was a thing. And I had heard things like I recognized Taylor Frankie Paul's name, but I certainly didn't follow her. I didn't know any details about their lives or what happened. All I knew was basically mom talk was a thing. And when I heard like the swinger allegations,
Yeah.
I realized, okay, I was like, oh, I've heard of this, but if you told me like what is mom talk, I wouldn't have remembered that there was a swinger scandal. So I was vaguely aware, but not any of the details until watching the show.
Yeah. No, I knew. I think I started following Taylor like after I heard about the swinging allegations. Like I was like, oh,
I'm sure
there's
that's what a
drama
lot of
on.
people, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, there's drama in her life. Like this sounds interesting.
Hmm.
And then like shortly after she started dating Dakota, and then like I've seen videos with her and him, and like all this stuff. So like I only knew her side of it. I know the rest of the wives,
Yeah.
moms stories. So like that was interesting to see like overall their friend group. I have seen some of Michaela's TikToks, but other than that, like I hadn't seen anyone else.
Mm.
But so now it's interesting that they all are coming up on my For You page now. It's like obviously
Yeah.
I've interacted with them. But so speaking of the different cast members, do you have any favorite cast members?
I really liked Demi and Jesse. I
Yeah.
think were the two that I feel like were made for reality TV. Like I think that those two, just their personalities, they're much more outgoing. I feel like than and opinionated than like most of the other women. So I did feel myself kind of gravitating towards them. I think that Taylor, I loved how just honest and open she was with her relationship. Like I really thought that that was great for a season 1 cast member, especially because a lot of times on these shows, season 1 people are very aware of the cameras, they're aware of their image and scared to put things out there. And I think it's kind of rare that you get someone like Taylor who's just willing to put everything out there from the very start. And I admire that. I think that that is a really great, makes for a really great show. And obviously she's kind of the lead of this show. She's, if you're going to say like the queen bee of a show, I think that's definitely Taylor. And so I think that that's always the kind of the person that people first look at when they think of like this group, this show. That's the first person you're going to think of. And I think when you have someone like that that is the face of the show and is so open, I think that kind of makes everybody else feel like they need to also be that way. And so I think that in the future that that will be good for the show to have someone like Taylor be kind of the face of it.
Yeah. No, that I agree with everything you just said. I'm just like word for word. But in general, like I feel like everyone in the cast is like a good cast member too. Like I love
Yeah.
Taylor and I think that like she brings a lot to the table, but like what you said, it kind of trickles down to like the rest of the people. And I think that's what made it great is like everyone was sharing about their lives and like talking about personal things going on and like all the drama and the friendships, which is like girl friendships can be dramatic and you really see that with this group, especially when there's a lot of things happening. So, for example, we saw that Taylor got arrested for domestic violence that was happening, and that was a whole whole event that is crazy for anyone to deal with. And the fact that it was happening on camera, I was like, oh my gosh. But so, what were your thoughts on that whole situation?
Yeah, so okay, I think that the timing of this is very confusing because episode 1, so this is my understanding of it, and I could be wrong. Like, correct me if you have a different impression of this, but so it seems like they filmed the pilot of this show back like a year before the rest of the season,
Yeah.
episode 1.
Oh, well,
And
because you can tell with Taylor's pregnancy,
right,
her
right, right,
body,
right.
like her whole
Exactly.
body changed.
Yeah. So they filmed that a long time ago. And usually what happens on a lot of these shows is that they'll film the pilot and then they have to wait to get like a season pickup. So a lot of times this is the case where like the pilot is months before. But in this case, I think that it was like an extra long time between that and the rest of the season because of Taylor's arrest. Because that didn't happen, like that happened maybe like a month or two, it seems like, after the pilot. And then I guess as they were waiting for a season pickup, Taylor gets arrested. And then I guess maybe because of that, they like waited longer to film the rest of it. And so they kind of waited for like that to all kind of maybe that delayed things a bit. And so then like a year later, yeah, they go back and film the rest of the season. And so that was a whole plot twist at the end of the first episode that I mean like we saw the arrest in the trailer, so it wasn't like shocking, but like I didn't expect for it to happen at that moment. So I was like, "Oh, whoa. Here we are already." I
Yeah.
guess in my mind like I thought that was going to be later in the season or I don't know, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was a crazy cliffhanger at the end of season 1. I mean at the end of episode 1."
I know. Yeah, it was kind of crazy with the timing of it all, but that makes sense that you're saying like a pilot episode was filmed before the rest of the whole show got picked up. So you won't see that in other seasons because you know it's like already like
Right,
they started a
exactly.
season. But because this is the very first season of the show, like they had to wait, which that's another layer. Like you're getting basically 2 years in this person's life now because it's like you
Mhm.
had the whole year before and then now the season is filming. Um,
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy that they weren't filming during that time, but like
yeah,
because they had filmed a little before, like you kind of got to see the before and after
yeah,
of this like life-changing event in her life. I mean, it's like this is season 1, but you're kind of already seeing such a large portion of her life and such a difference between episode 1 Taylor and episode 6 Taylor or 8 Taylor. Like
yeah.
it's kind of wacky that we got to see like such a large chunk of their lives when I don't think that was planned at the start.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt it. I feel like you wouldn't have expected an arrest to
Well,
happen.
right, but I'm saying like it probably like in their minds they were thinking, okay, like we'll film episode 1 and then like 2 or 3 months later we'll film the rest of the season and it won't even be like acknowledged that there was a pause there because not much would have probably changed in their lives in a couple months. But because of the arrest, I would assume that very much like I was saying, made thing got uh, the rest of filming delayed a bit, and so because of that, you get to see like such a large chunk.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, another big storyline that happened this season was about Whitney, or a lot of things with Whitney. But first, we have that her TikTok. I don't know the exact background of this, but can you give the quick background of what this TikTok was?
Yeah, so her child was diagnosed with RSV, and she I guess had posted something just saying like pray for me or something very vague, like that something was going on with her or her kid. I'm not sure exactly what that TikTok said, or maybe it was like an Instagram post, or I don't know. But then she later posted a TikTok of her dancing with her kid who's sick and like explaining the story. But because of like the fact that she's dancing and it's very like, it's a weird video. And she got blasted for it. Like that was a lot people were not happy about that post. And then allegedly Demi was saying that she admitted to her while they were doing ketamine one day that she posted that for sympathy, for clout, for attention, and that was the reason why she posted that. And then Whitney was upset because she's saying that people in the group didn't, and in the public too, I guess, were having a hard time forgiving her for that post, whereas they forgave Taylor for revealing the swinging scandal of this group, which happened prior to filming starting. Um, and that everybody forgave her for that quickly, but people wouldn't forgive Whitney.
Yeah. There's a lot there. I feel like overall, Whitney does just want the attention, is my guess. Like if she came to that conclusion, her admitting that, like I want to believe Demi there because like I like Demi. But
Yeah.
so I also have a bias in that. But I think like I would believe what Demi says about that. I don't think she would be lying for just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I don't think that Demi is lying. I mean, that's a weird story to make up. It's a very specific story. So I definitely believe it. Now, is it possible that maybe Whitney didn't exactly say those words? And if we had heard the conversation, maybe it wasn't quite so direct, quite so, um, like the way that she's saying it makes it sound like
Blunt.
she's like
Yeah.
evil having this plan that, oh, I'm gonna post this and use my sick kid for likes and clout. And maybe she said it in more of a jokey way, or maybe she said it in more of a way like, yeah, I want to bring attention to this matter. Like, who knows? But I do believe that that conversation happened. It's just that maybe if we actually heard it, it wouldn't quite be so egregious as it sounds.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But I mean, it is what it is. We don't have that exact audio, so
And
we
that's
don't
why
know.
it's hard. Like, I hate
Yeah.
when drama happens on a show because of a conversation that we didn't see, because it's impossible to know what really happened. Like, I feel like there's a very famous example of this from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, where a whole season's worth of drama was because of one line that one person said off camera, allegedly, that they denied saying. And the whole season is just her saying, no, I didn't say it. And the other housewife saying, yes, you did. And it's like, okay, we're never going to know. Like, why is this an entire season's worth of drama that caused a friendship to dissolve when we're never going to see it? We can't pick a side because we don't know. And that's so frustrating. So, I mean, luckily, this wasn't a big part of the season, really. But, like, if it was, that would have been really frustrating.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of that not being as big of a part, is that we also see that Whitney leaves their group chat, which this was a bigger piece of drama, I think, in terms of just the you could actually see the reactions and everyone saying, "Oh my gosh, she left the group chat. What are we doing? Like, what's happening here?" Like, obviously, there was like the fight that happened in their overnight stay. Where were they again?
Um,
I
were they in
forget. They went
Vegas?
on a trip somewhere. And what? What do you say?
Were they in Vegas?
Well, that was for the later in the season
Shipping. Oh, what were you talking about? Oh, the
when she leaves.
earlier. Oh, I don't know. I don't
Okay, we
remember.
can cut this part out. Okay. Well, when we hear about the fight or we see the fight happening with Whitney and some of the other girls, she doesn't feel comfortable in general and being friends with them and decided she was going to leave their group chat. And then that's kind of like how they communicate, that's how they make plans for things. So obviously then Whitney's not included in some of their plans and things that they want to do. So she's seeing this, so we're seeing like they're seeing like her side, and then we're seeing everyone else, which the side by side views were like kind of sad on Whitney's part, but also like, okay, like you also did that to yourself. So I didn't feel bad for her, but it was kind of funny in my eyes, like the editing purposes of that.
I know.
But overall, why do you think Whitney left the group chat? Do you think it was reasonable and the repercussions of it?
I mean, I think that everybody was kind of right where they were like, she leaves so that then she waits to see who checks on her and asks if she's okay. And, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, I know I'm going to be making comparisons to like Housewives a lot with this show because there are similarities to it. But it's like when somebody walks off a reunion and then they're like, they have nowhere to go. Where are they going to go? But they're just waiting for somebody to go, oh, don't leave, like, come, we're sorry, like, we just we'll stop. Like, they just they want the sympathy and they want the to get the attention for leaving. And I do think that that's a big part of why Whitney left. I think that she's the type of person who, when the attention's not on her or things aren't going her way, that she wants to play the sympathy card. She's a perpetual victim, and she'll leave the chat. She won't come on the chat. She'll do, whatever, so that the attention will gravitate to her and she'll get the sympathy for everybody being so mean and bullying her when we don't talk about the actual reason why everybody's upset with her.
Yeah, for sure. So continued trend here with Whitney is just she just wants the attention and will pretty much do whatever she can to get it.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, it kind of worked to a degree, though. A lot of the season was about her because the fact that she left the group chat because she's doing all these things, and so yeah, I mean, she was kind of a large focus of the season. So, and in a way, I guess it worked.
yeah. But we also got some of our other cast members getting some spotlight, not just Whitney, even though she was a main focus. But we see that Zach, once the girls go to Vegas and some of the guys go as well, and Zach is upset about Jen going to Chippendales as like an event. The girls all go together and see the strippers, and it's just like a show, fun thing. And Zach takes this as, if you go, I'm gonna divorce you to Jen. And that is a strong statement. First of all, he's not, those guys weren't even touching her. She wasn't touching them, and like he blew that up so much, in my opinion. Like I think like I'm surprised, like how I don't know how they worked through it, but somehow Jen and Zach are fine and they talked through it. But Jen did not seem okay when she was on the phone and the conversations that she was having with him. Like he just like felt very strongly about this. And obviously, it's definitely religious based, in my opinion. Like, knowing, like, we're not Mormon, so, like, I can't see the side he's seeing,
You're
but his
not.
opinion, yeah, I can't see God. His opinion of things, like, are more conservative than I would say than our opinions of things. So, for that side of it, I guess, like, his wise, it brought up some of those emotions and feelings that he was feeling, but I still don't like the way that he made Jen feel in that. And I think it could have been come across in a better way of like, let's talk about this, or like much more calm than the situation did occurred. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, he's very controlling, and I do not think that that's a healthy relationship at all. I I don't know for sure if they're still together. I was trying to tell based on her Instagram. She hasn't, the last few posts he hasn't been in with her, but like as of somewhat recently he was. So like if they did break up, it would have been pretty recently, I guess, but there's no evidence of that other than that.
I think
But
she was still wearing her ring though.
oh, okay. So they're probably still together, but that, yeah, I think that when he first said that, like when they before they left, and she was basically saying, "How would you feel if we went to something like that?" And he was like, "Well, it would be tough raising a kid by yourself." And I thought that that was supposed to be like a bad joke, but then when he was actually that upset just by her going, like there weren't any pictures of her that he was sent, like, with the all over her or like anything scandalous. It was just her saying that that was where they went, and he was outraged. And I mean, that to me just felt way over the top, a little scary. Like, I don't think that that's a healthy relationship at all whatsoever. And when she came back and was like, "Oh yeah, everything's fine," like no, it's not. Like, you are just saying that to so that people don't ask questions and this stops being a topic of conversation, but things are not fine.
No. Yeah, for sure. You can just tell like Zach is just not secure at all, it seems like, in their relationship, if that's how he's acting. Like someone who would trust their partner would not act that way towards them.
Yeah.
And so there's just more fundamental problems there that I think they just aren't going to be discussing, or they haven't really shown us as much. We only saw that real big fight between them, but I'm sure there's other things that he's not so happy with her doing or saying, or certain things like that, which so I hope maybe she'll realize it, or maybe that was just blown up more into show perspective, but maybe he's okay overall because we also were getting edited stuff, but like in their personalities. But I think he is very aggressive in the way he came across with that.
For sure.
So that's not arguable. But for other things in the relationship, maybe they work through it fine. But I don't know. I don't know how they are. But
I
that's
yeah, and I mean, like, he just maybe isn't happy about her doing the show. Maybe he just doesn't like that, and so maybe this was a conversation they had where he was like, oh, you're going to do this show and then they're going to make you do all these scandalous things. And she's like, oh, no, I promise that's not what the show is like, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, she was able to convince him to be okay with them doing it. And then this happened, and he probably is like, well, I told you so. Like, this is exactly what I said would happen, blah, blah, blah. And so that could be a part of it too. But I mean, either way, it just sounds like she has no control over anything in their marriage, and that he just wants her to do everything exactly the way that he wants it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's so much to go over, so we still have a few more points to talk about with Mormon wives. But next, let's talk about Macy's DM that she received about Dakota. So throughout the season, we're obviously seeing a lot in Taylor and Dakota's relationship and the turmoil and all this stuff that's going down, the fighting. But with that, like, we're hearing from things that like are happening like outside of their relationship too, that we're like, okay, like maybe it happened before they started dating, but we don't know for sure what happened there because Taylor's not sure if Dakota's telling the truth. So this DM that Macy's receiving is basically saying like someone hooked up with Dakota before Taylor and Dakota started dating, but then this person might be the person who's sorry, a lot of people generalizations, but Taylor thought it could be this girl Jenna and asked Dakota if it was Jenna, and he said no, and he like swore on everything that is not Jenna. So this DM signifies maybe it is Jenna, and this is causing drama there. Dakota still says it's not. We still don't know the results of this, but that's where our cliffhanger left off at the end of the season. But what are your thoughts overall on this DM?
Yeah, like when Taylor brought up the name Jenna, I was like, "Am I supposed to know who Jenna is?" That was my first reaction. I was like, "Wait, which one's Jenna?" And I was like, "No, there's no Jenna on this show." So yeah, it's some other girl who obviously they both know, and or maybe he's done something with in the past, and I don't know, but um, yeah, so Whitney got this like anonymous confessional. I guess I mean my understanding is that I guess she posted on her story like for anonymous confessions, not thinking that any of them were going to be about her friends, but just like people talking about their own lives.
Yeah, she's a public
And
figure, so she just like can do that kind of
yeah,
stuff, get general interest in it.
right. So then, yeah, somebody submitted this anonymous message about the fact that they hooked up with Dakota. So I mean, yeah, like it's probably true. But I guess maybe it was during that time where I guess like they weren't exclusive and that they had both said that they could hook up with other people and not tell the other one about it. So maybe it was during that time. I don't think it's clear, but it could also be some random person making something up. Who knows? I don't think that Taylor should make any rash decisions based on this anonymous tip before getting other information. But obviously, she's pregnant at this time. She's all over the place, very emotional. They've been fighting already. She's not sure whether she should be with him or not. Like, I think it's one of those things where it's not necessarily rational for her to make any changes based on this random anonymous tip that Macy got, but it's kind of just like the last straw of things that have been building up over the last few weeks, months, whatever. And she just kind of doesn't know what to do at this moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's she just felt guilty not sharing it, which I can get like on Macy's side. Like she had this information. Like, what if this is like gonna impact Taylor's life in the
Mm-hmm.
future? Like she doesn't want it to blow up after the baby is born. Um, so but I mean, I guess the timing of it is a little bit iffy in this. It's like, why is she holding this until like this moment? But in general, like I think, I mean, I still see TikToks of them, of Taylor and Dakota still together. So that taints my perspective of it too. I'm like, I know that they're still together. But in general, in the show, it's causing a lot of drama in this, which is obviously exciting to see.
Yeah, and it's also one of the things where Macy knows, like, okay, like she got this DM. If she's going to talk about it on camera, then she knows that she has to tell Taylor about it, and then Taylor has to tell Dakota. Like, it's one of those things, like, once it's brought up as a topic, then you only have so much control over, like, who you can tell. Like, you can't just, like, not bring it up. And spoiler alert, that's kind of a problem on Selling Sunset this season also, that we'll get into next week. But yeah, like, you have to bring it up to the person, because, like, that is horrible to talk about something and the person who is the source of it doesn't know that it's being talked about on the show, and that's worse. So you have to tell the person so that they have a chance to defend themselves, they have a chance to, do what they will with that information.
Yeah, definitely. But we also wanted to chat through more of the Whitney end of era, it seems like, and her mom talk, the fact that everyone is talking about how she's not going to be in it anymore, and they all unfollow her at the same moment in the season finale of the show, of the season one. I feel like there was just so much drama in that. It was like, okay, let's all unfollow now. Like, who plans that in that moment? Like, it was honestly, it was great TV, but I was like, that's like the most unreal thing that happened. Like the fact that they all unfollowed at the same time. Obviously, like they probably were all going to anyways, but it happened all at the same moment. We're just kind of like, I was like, okay, that seemed a little cheesy, but it was funny to watch. So I feel like with all the drama that was going down, like her not feeling part of the group, her just not really wanting to be friends with anyone, like I think it makes sense that she wouldn't really be in it anymore. Like you don't need to force someone to be there. Like I think that's just like not going to be fun to watch if she were still trying to be part of their group, trying to be their friend, and they all are just hating on her all the time and like shitting on her. Like that's not great. So it's like Whitney can protect herself also by just like not wanting to be in it, which she kind of already has done. So do you think she's not going to be coming back to Mom Talk?
I think that she'll come back. I mean, I think that, look, they're on a show together now, so they're kind of tied together not only through Mom Talk, but through the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So if Whitney's going to continue being on the show, she has to still be a part of this group in some way. So I think that, look, she could leave the show
Yeah.
and then leave Mom Talk and never speak to these girls again. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened, but if the show does get renewed for season 2, which I would say seems pretty likely with how buzzy it is right now, then if she's going to be a part of the show, then yeah, I think she'll come back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's still drama with her and some of the girls though. So I'm like, are they friends? Are they just doing this for show? Like all this stuff. So I don't know. I feel like it is interesting because yeah, she could leave the show. She could not want to film, but if she is part of the show, like it would be really hard for her not to be part of Mom Talk. She could still be like on the outsides of it, I guess, like not really like core, like as
Mm-hmm.
involved, but like still has to be in it.
Yeah, involved in some capacity, whatever
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. Well, what would you want to see if there is a season two, which we hope there is? I feel like most people love it right now, so I don't see why not. But what would you want to see in the next season?
I would want to hear from more people who are involved in the swinging scandal. Like, I think that's the one thing about this show that surprised me, was that I figured this was also the group that was involved in the swinging scandal. Like, I thought all of these wives had been swinging with all of these husbands, but that's not the case. Taylor's, I guess, the only one who was involved in that, it seems like. And it was a whole different group of girls that were with that. So that still confuses me a little bit. I need to read more into that whole thing, because, like, I'm a little bit confused about that, because Taylor at one point, I guess it was in her TikTok where she was revealing it, was like, all of us were swinging with all of each other's husbands. And then it turns out that that was a whole different group of Mom Talk. So I don't know, because I wasn't totally aware of this whole thing before. I don't know that I totally understand that whole thing, but I would like to hear from more of those people to get more of the tea on that whole scandal. But other than that, yeah, I just hope that it's most of the same girls return. I think it's always good to add in a couple of new faces here and there, to keep a show fresh. But other than that, I would be very interested to see where this whole group goes from here.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Because the swinging scandal happened before this all happened, it's going to be harder, I think, to get more of that context. But I would love to also hear more about that because I heard she talked a little bit more about it on the Vile Files. Nick interviewed her last week. So she shed a little bit light that was like, and then some of these girls, like, they're no longer friends. Like, that might be hard
Mm.
to do if they're no longer
Maybe
talking
make
to each
for a
other.
better show.
Yeah, true. But maybe she'll write a book one day or something. More about it. But I mean, anything that's going on in their lives, I feel like is drama. Like I'm sure there's gonna be more that's happening with Taylor and Dakota, but they're still gonna be together. But all that and like with all the other friendships, like there's gotta be some other fights that happen. Like I think in the next season that would be fun to see. But obviously, we've got a little bit to go for that. But overall, what are your final thoughts on overall watching Mormon Wives?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I certainly hope that that it does come back for season two. Like I said, I would be surprised if it didn't. So I hope that next season we get like one episode a week or like in batches maybe, especially if it's a longer season. Because I just hate when a whole season comes out at once. I know I've gone on this rant before, but I think it would have been so much more fun to be able to watch it episode by episode and have something to look forward to every week and be able to really break it down and predict what's going to happen the following week and all this stuff. So I miss having that opportunity to watch it that way. So I hope that if it comes back now that they know that it has an audience and they don't have to like put everything all out there at once, that hopefully they'll more do a little bit of a slow rollout to give us time to watch the season and get excited for it each week.
Yeah, they're sucking into the binge mentality. They're like, okay, you guys want to watch it? Here's everything. Um,
Well, like Hulu does do weekly releases with a lot of shows. Like Kardashians does a weekly release, but they obviously have a built-in fan base. I think a lot of times with these shows, they'll do a whole like put all the episodes out there so that when it's a new show, they want to make sure people don't just like watch one episode. It's not, the most exciting. It's just mostly introductions and then they give up on it. So they want to do, put the whole season out there to give people a chance while they're sitting there and while they're into it to finish the whole thing. So, but in the future, it will already have, a built-in fan base. So we'll see what they do.
yeah, tell Hulu do a steady release if you're listening.
Writing them on
But
the front
now
right
let's
now.
yeah, write them. Now let's go on to Big Brother. So this past week we saw a crazy eviction happen with Joseph getting evicted. We saw that MJ and Chelsea changed their votes last minute to vote for Joseph over Chemo because in the final moments before the vote happened, Chemo gave an emotional speech that really hit to MJ and Chelsea, and so they couldn't vote for Chemo then. So flipped their vote to vote for Joseph instead. So what were your thoughts on that, Michael?
Yeah, no, that was really crazy to watch in the moment because MJ was the first vote, and she was like, it really looked like she was having a really hard time in that moment, not knowing who to vote for. And when she said Joseph, I like screamed a little bit. Like, I think I had a visceral reaction that I was like, wait, what? Because they had talked, MJ and Chelsea had talked about that earlier in the week, and MJ was really pushing to evict Joseph, and Chelsea was pushing back on that, and they seemingly didn't really come to an agreement on that. And it did seem like by the time the feeds went out that on Thursday afternoon, that more than likely Chemo was going to be evicted, and especially because they had really been talking about Joseph versus Rubina, and they really hadn't talked a lot about flipping the vote in the event of it being Joseph versus Chemo. But when it ended up being Joseph versus Chemo, it was like, okay, Chemo's probably going home. And then when when MJ did that, I was like, oh my god, she changed her vote in that moment. It seemed like in the DR, she was still debating what to do, and that is, I think this is the first time in Big Brother history where a vote was flipped by someone's speech. It was the first time that somebody's speech has actually flipped a vote. And that's wild in 26 years. If
Yeah.
that happened for the first time.
No, I would think I would be affected by some speeches more than not. But yeah, so that was a crazy thing to watch. But then we also hear that there's no more AI Arena. So this is the last week of that. So now it's going to be only two nominees. And so we see that Chelsea wins HOH in this next competition. And then she nominates Angela and Chemo, which I feel like that was pretty expected to see. But what were your thoughts on Chelsea's HOH so far?
It's funny because Chelsea did not want to win this HOH, and she ended up winning it anyways. So I mean, look, she was in a great position in this house, probably the best position. So I don't know. She was right, I think, to not want to win it, but I do think that by putting up Angela and Chemo, easy nominations for her. She kind of wins either way, whoever goes home. She has a couple of people who she has in mind should the POV be used that also, put her in pretty much a no lose situation. So I don't think this was a terrible one for her to win. It's fine. Um, but she definitely felt like she was in a good position where she didn't need to win this and didn't necessarily want to. But yeah, I mean, I think those nominees were fine.
Yeah, for sure. And then we see that MJ wins the power of veto. So do you think that she's going to use it?
I actually don't know as of right this moment. By the time you listen to this, she may have already used it. It's middle of the afternoon tomorrow. The veto ceremony will happen. And I think that Chelsea and MJ have been talking today a lot about whether or not they should use it, and if they don't use it, who the target should be between Angela and Chemo. Because originally it seemed like Chelsea was thinking Angela would be the target, then it flipped to Chemo, and then, when MJ first won, it sounded like they weren't going to use it. Chemo was going to go home probably. But now today they have been talking about the possibility of using it and putting either Quinn or Leah on the block. It seems like Chelsea would want to put Leah up. MJ would prefer that Quinn goes up. So it seems like they have more discussions to be had throughout tonight and tomorrow morning. So we'll see. But I mean, if I had to make a prediction right at this moment, I think she might use it. And I think that she might put Quinn up. I don't know. I really don't know. It's hard to say, but there's a lot of conversations that I think still need to be had and may be happening right now.
Yeah, I know that's crazy with all the live feeds that you can find out real time what's going on, and some of their thought processes and everything. It could change like snap of a finger. But we also have a lot to wait probably until see what's going to happen for Thursday night's episode. We don't even know if the power veto is going to use or not. But as of right now, who do you think is going to get evicted this week?
Yeah, I think that's so dependent on if the veto gets used. Because I think if the veto gets used, whoever goes up will probably go home.
Mhm.
If I had to guess, I think that they're not going to do that. They're not going to put somebody up and upset somebody else just for that person to stay. Like, I mean, the rest of the house could decide that, I guess, and go against the Chelsea. But yeah, I think if the veto doesn't get used, if it's Angela and Chemo, I think the Chemo would probably go home.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I think that's all for our Big Brother recap this week. Now let's chat more about the challenge.
Yes. So, Challenge 40, episode 3, was this past week. So, we had trivia, which is everyone's favorite challenge annual tradition. And this time it was trivia about the challenge, which is my favorite version of trivia because I like to be able to see how many I know. But at the end, it was actually a tie, and Jordan got a question about who Devin's Rivals 3 partner was, which everyone knows was Cheyenne. Corey has a baby with Cheyenne, and Cheyenne is a cast member on Teen Mom now for many years. So she's still very much in the MTV family. And Jordan couldn't remember Cheyenne's name. He said Sylvia. It was weird because clearly, I mean, Jordan was at Cheyenne's baby naming, I think he said, or something like that. Like, clearly they know each other. So it certainly seemed in that moment like Jordan may have thrown that challenge for whatever reason. But is that the impression you got by watching that? Do you think that he threw it, or do you think he genuinely forgot Cheyenne's name?
Well, I think that if I were in that situation, like I honestly think my mind could go blank in thinking of someone's name if I were to put myself in that. But I think for the context of what the question was and who he associates, like he was just talking to Corey about it, like I think that adds a level of like, okay, he could have thrown that because like if that it was that to that level, like if I was just like something else I didn't like, maybe it was like a really stupid thing I just like couldn't think of in that moment, like then I would think it was on not on purpose. But for this one, I think it is slightly more leaning to it being on purpose.
Yeah, I think I was in the moment. I actually didn't really think too much about it, about him throwing it. Like, I just thought, oh, like I guess somehow I didn't realize that Jordan, because Jordan wasn't on Rivals 3. Like, he actually didn't know necessarily know who the Devin's partner would have been that season. But I then when I heard saw his confessional where he was asked about it and he kind of smiled, he was like, "Oh no, yeah, I forgot." It was like, "Oh, okay, that was on purpose. That he you threw that, and he must have made some deal with Bananas and Laurels to throw that competition and give it to them." So that pushed me over the edge to thinking that he threw that. But also in that moment, after Jordan lost that challenge and it ended up going to Era 2, Laurel and Bananas get to decide who goes into elimination against Horacio and Jenny from Era 4. So they get to decide who, from whether it's going to be Era 1 or Era 3, Anissa and Derek, or Jordan and Naya, who were the targets from those two eras, who were the only ones eligible to go into elimination. They get to decide who goes in versus Jenny and Horacio. So they ended up choosing Anissa and Derek. But do you think that was the right decision, or should they have gone with Jordan and Naya, who were probably the bigger threats and could have gotten, guaranteed that two big threats go home, regardless of who ends up winning either the guys or girls eliminations? Or do they choose who they maybe have deals with, who they know for longer, and choose to save Anissa and Derek because of that? What do you think? What move do you think they should have gone with?
I think, I mean, obviously, I'm still new into like the challenge universe of things, so I don't know all of those histories between those players. It feels like there's a lot that I'm still like catching up into in terms of like, oh my gosh, like they used to be friends, they used to be together, like all these different layers to it that I'm like trying to understand as I'm watching this season. But I do think that it made sense that of who they decided to go in of Anissa and Derek. Um, I don't know, like in their minds, obviously they were upset about that, but like it's also a game and like things have to happen in terms of like getting out people every week. So I hope, I mean, obviously these players seem like they take things very personally sometimes, but also they do know it's a game and they understand that aspect of it. So it's like they can't get too upset.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the challenge so unique, is that with something like Survivor, Big Brother, you can make moves and blindsides and anything without having to think of future repercussions. Like, if somebody goes home, they're gone and you don't have to consider them in your game anymore, unless there's like a battle back or something like that. But that's rare. That's not something that you necessarily play with in mind. Whereas on the challenge, you have to think, if I make this move this season, this person's very likely going to come back next season and get revenge for that. And they're not going to trust me again. So it's really, you have to thread that needle so carefully to make big moves without upsetting someone enough to where they're going to want revenge on you. And so I think that with Laurel and Bananas, like, Laurel has been in a relationship with Jordan. They've dated before. Bananas and Jordan have so much history. Naya's been on this for a long time. She's only done a couple seasons, but it seemed like she and Laurel have a strong friendship, even though they've actually never done a season together, I don't believe. Oh no, maybe yeah, they did Free Agents together. Yeah, that's not true. But that was a long time ago. That was 10 years ago. So it is so interesting. But I guess I do think that they made the move I expected them to make, I guess. So I wasn't too surprised by that. There was some controversy with this elimination, though. So I am going to pull up here an article from people.com that kind of summarizes the controversy that we didn't necessarily see on TV. TV made it look like these eliminations were both really close and that, there was no controversy over who would win. But apparently that's not exactly what happened in real life. So there's been a lot of conversation on Twitter from cast members complaining that there was some shady editing going on. There was some shady calls from production during this challenge. So fans were able to pause the screen looking at Derek's board when they declared him the winner, that it didn't look like all of his pegs were actually on the board. So Derek said on Twitter that he said, all my pegs were on the board, in quotes, about 90 seconds prior to Horacio finishing. But apparently, one of them fell out afterwards. And so when they actually declared him the winner, all the pegs weren't on the board at that time. Nerys, who wasn't there, but obviously Horacio's girlfriend, who Derek was competing against, said editing really did a number on this. It wasn't as neck and neck as the edit made it. Derek said, I heard his ball got stuck for 10 to 15 seconds after, and I believe I slowed down in commotion, having no clue what the commotion was. Then Horacio said, everybody has their version of the story, but my truth is not just the truth, but also what everyone else on stage saw, which is that there were things that happened that were definitely not in the episode. At one point, my ball got stuck while it was going down the platform. So while I'm picking up these pegs, TJ's trying to blow the horn, and TJ's horn never works. So he's telling me to stop, and Kylan's telling me to stop, and I stopped for a solid 5 to 10 seconds, which in that type of game was extremely crucial. Meanwhile, Derek is still running, and he said, explaining that his pegs on the board were unstable. Horacio also said producers would help put falling pegs back on, but only for Derek. Nobody came to help me when my pegs would fall. I would have to take the time to put them back in. So it sounds like there was just some kind of unfairness going on, some rules that were unclear, and malfunctions going on with the horn and with the pegs. And it sounded like this was a mess. And, TV has to make it seem like none of that's happening. They want you to think, that everything's going smoothly. But it sounds like there was a little bit of shadiness going on. So hearing that, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, editing can kind of make things look however they want to. So it's interesting now hearing the other side of that. Like, obviously, producers are going to want to keep in someone who they want more, like whatever. Like shows can kind of do that and get away with it because you don't get to hear from the other side of like this was messed up, like it caused the difference in this who it won, who stayed and who left. Like that's a big change there. And so I feel bad in Horacio for that reasoning, but it's also like it is crazy. I don't know if we're ever gonna see it because it's like it was on the producers to do it that way and the editing that way. That like they're not gonna show us like that raw footage of all the details happening. I don't think because then it's gonna look bad on them. So I think we're just gonna have to know like think about what's happening, what we're hearing in terms of what we want to believe. But I do believe that there was definitely some interference or impact, something that impacted the way that ended up the winning of that game or the challenge elimination.
Yeah.
I always forget the word.
No, I think that the big debate I would say is whether the the pegs falling out,
Yeah.
does that count? If a peg was in and then falls out, does that count as having been in? And do all the pegs have to be on at the same time when you call check for it to count? Because I guess if the production would say, oh, if we were just helping them get it back on, like those already counted. It didn't matter that they were off or on. We're just, putting them on so that at the end of the challenge, it looks for TV purposes, like it's easy to tell, okay, all of these, you have a full board here.
Yeah.
But, whether for both of Horacio and Derek, the rules were the same that, all the pegs just had to be on the board at one point, I guess, which is a weird rule. Like, I feel like they should have to all be on for it to count. But I guess that's kind of the debate, is whether that rule was clear from the beginning and whether it was the same for both people. So I don't know. It's just so weird to me that for a show called The Challenge that has been going on for 40 seasons, that you would think of any show in existence, they should have this down pat, how to conduct a challenge, make rules clear, have it not be shady, like rules changing in the middle and different for one person than another. Like it just, for a show that's been on for so long, they shouldn't be having these issues still. And apparently it's not going to be the last time that we see some shady challenge calls this season. From Theo said on Twitter, like, this is not going to be the last time you see this controversy happen. So I guess we'll see later this season that we'll see some more. I don't know whether he's talking about eliminations or daily challenges, but apparently there was some shady rule calling going on this season.
Is the whole politics of the challenge world I didn't know about.
Well, and this isn't usually a thing. Like, I would say, like, I don't think last season we had any of this controversy. I don't remember the last, I can't remember the last time. Well, I do remember the last time that, or at least the last time I remember, there was an elimination between Laurel and Ninja in War of the Worlds 2, where they had to put pegs on kind of a similar way, actually, and then climb something and get to the top. And Laurel put one at the very top. It looked like there was a hole for a peg, but apparently that was a hole for a camera. And she thought that that was the last peg she had to put in. And so she put it there and she pressed her button and called it. And they originally called it as if she had won. And then it turns out they realized when they looked at it, they were like, oh no, that's not the one we were talking about. So then, because she was called as the winner, she had stopped, but Ninja had kept going, I guess, just to kind of finish it out. And so she ended up getting it first, but Laurel had stopped playing because they had already called her as the winner. So then it was very controversial as to who should have won that. But
that sounds
anyways,
controversial.
this has happened before, but that was, that was 6 seasons ago. So we hadn't had this in a long time, a controversy like this that I can remember. So apparently not only do we get it this time, but we're going to get it more in the future. So we will see. But the challenge is off next week for the VMAs. So we will catch up in 2 weeks again with the next episode. So we will be back next week, though, to talk Selling Sunset, to talk more shows. The Circle will have started next week, so we'll have that to cover. And, of course, more Big Brother. And we will catch you guys next week. So thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to follow us at Let's Chat Reality on all social media and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we will chat with you guys next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.